sitting in my car, going insane, talking to myself. Just got off of work in a bad mood because I didn't sleep last night. So I'm just gonna start here. Game tweaks is an idea where it's basically just turning shitty nitpicks into something kind of constructive, turning them into a sort of game design exercise. So the idea is that I'm going to talk about a game, and then I'm going to bring up a few little design tweaks that were I, supplanted onto the dev team, I would maybe put in the game, I mean, I thought of it now, why wouldn't I think of it then? Because that's how that works. Okay, so Breath of the Wild, pretty contentious game, I think it's pretty safe to say. It's weird, because none of my siblings are into video games. I have a lot of siblings. I'm the youngest among them, and the only, I've had my elder brothers were into Street Fighter 2, whereas the siblings closer to me were more into, Final Fantasy and RPGs, and particularly Chrono Trigger. And my sister, who is the second youngest, whereas I am the very youngest, she was pretty into Zelda. That was the only game series she was ever into. And I presume the rest of my brothers were also into Zelda, but I never really was. The whole cultural hype around Zelda was never something that it's something I was always around, and in my teenage years, I briefly had a bit of a, fuck the system, man, I'm gonna be a dick about people who like Zelda phase, but that was only for a little while when I was 15. I swiftly got over that. People liking Zelda, no shit. People like Zelda. They're good fucking games. But yeah, it was just weird growing up around this cultural zeitgeist that I had no attachment to. So, having absolutely no reverence for the Zelda series at all, and having heard about complaints regarding Breath of the Wild for a full year before I decided to buy it, because I happened to buy myself a Switch for last Christmas, was pretty much the best possible situation I could have been in for getting the game and playing it, because all of the complaints people have, all of the weirdness people might feel about the structure and how different it is from old Zelda, I don't give a shit. And I've also never really played I've never played a whole ton of open world games. I've never played Skyrim, and I've never played Fallout, because none of them interest me. And I'm just generally not into open world games. So it's fucking Zelda was Breath of the Wild was pretty mind-blowing to me, honestly. But yeah, obviously with this new gameplay style, it has a lot of really resounding strengths, as well as a lot of weird fucking weaknesses and some really obnoxious parts. The difficulty curve is completely backwards. To me, the most perfect thing about the world is the most perfect thing about the game is the world, is what I'm saying. But the one thing that's, that got a lot of people's panties in a bunch was the inventory shit and breakable weapons. And, that was another thing where, I've only ever beaten Ocarina of Time on the 3DS. That's the only fucking Zelda game I had played before then. At least to completion. I had toyed around with the other ones to some degree. But yeah, this tweak I thought of wasn't... It's fairly simple. I suppose this episode was really just mostly me talking about what I think about Zelda in general, because it's something I think, is interesting about me, and is kind of unique, because, most people just fucking play Zelda, that's just fucking how it is, it's not really... So really, the big tweak I thought of was that, regarding the inventory shit, live switching weapons on the fly. Basically, as well as switching glyphs. Or, wait, no, runes. That's what they're called. The runes on the Sheikah Slate. What I'm thinking is that instead of it being a little line, a little row of thingies, of like a row of all your weapons, basically, I'm just saying it should have been a weapon wheel. Like, would that have not made more sense for you to be able to select all of your weapons from a weapon wheel instead of having to scroll to the front of the back of the line, which takes a while and, like, ruins the pace of the battle when you're, like, you just did a perfect dodge and you're trying to find your best two-hander sword in order to get your max damage off your flurry rush. Yeah, Doom had it. That's the first game that comes to mind, Doom 2016. And Twilight Princess and Skyward Sword apparently had it. You could, you equipped your 3 quick switch weapons by going into a weapon wheel. I've actually never played Twilight Princess, but I do remember that from the little bit I played of Skyward Sword of the first dungeon. You had this big old weapon wheel, and that was, a weapon wheel allows you to click a direction and instantly select something. So the idea that they wouldn't have done that with the glyphs and the, your swords and your shields and bows and arrows. Also, the ability to only switch between your bows and arrows only being able to switch between your bows and arrows when you have your bow and arrow pulled out was kind of annoying. Like, I understand why it's there from a design perspective, because they only have so many buttons to work with. And they want to keep, the target button on L2, basically, or ZL. But, it's just... Maybe you should have targeted onto enemies with the, R3, with clicking the right stick, It just all feels pretty archaic, and they're just trying to maintain the old control scheme when, it's all just arbitrary, and, all people in the world are used to the more intuitive, less mistake-prone system of holding one bumper to aim and then pressing the other one to fire. It's this thing we've been trained to do for 10 years, and, Nintendo doesn't want to play along because they want their Z/L targeting to stay what it is. And, the game works fine. It's, just a couple of goofy little things about its interface, dealing with it in real time. It can be kind of goofy. Yeah, that's about it. I'll have, these will be a little bit more substantial in the future. Probably have a little bit less of me just talking about the, just my history with the fucking game series I'm talking about in general. Man, when my car is parked, the AC stops being good. It stops making the air cold, so I'm gonna get the fuck out of here.